NFL draft in the books, and we head toward recruiting with the dead period coming to an end at the end of the month. So we expect the floodgates to open, and we've got a couple commits to talk about already right here at Ohio State Buckeyes Live, our 104th edition. From the top, Kevin Noon, Buckeye Grove, Tony Gerdeman there in the middle from Buckeye Scoop, and of course Steve Hellwagon, 247 Sports Bucknuts. Guys, how are we doing today?
Doing well.
Good.
We've recovered from the NFL draft.
Yes.
I know Steve was most excited about it.
Oh, I couldn't wait.
Didn't miss a second.
I was just so excited about it.
DVR'd and watched it a second time, I'm sure.
So excited. I went to Fort Wayne for the weekend to watch basketball, watch high school sophomores and juniors play basketball. That's how excited I was.
That's about where the NFL draft rates with Steve. Okay.
Well, Mark, I'm a Bears fan, so my weekend is still going strong. Now that we've got Super Bowls ahead of us, a franchise quarterback, now I know what Browns fans felt like this past year, but this time for the Bears, it's real, as opposed to what it is for the Browns, where it's pretend. For the Bears, it's going to be real. So that's pretty cool.
Well, the Bears can be made fun of course, but at least they've proven at some point that it is possible in Chicago to get to a Super Bowl.
Yeah, and who cares if it was nearly 40 years ago?
Yeah, it's been a while, but it's been proven.
They played that one in the rain. They had that one in the rain when Lovett was the head coach.
Yes, had that loss. Yes, against Peyton Manning and company. I almost bypassed that one. I guess since it was Rex Grossman, I didn't even necessarily count that fully.
Sexy Rexy.
I stopped watching when it was 7-0. I figured with the kickoff return for a touchdown, the game is over because that's how things go.
Yep.
Yeah, in 2006, another fan base could have taken possibly that same approach toward their championship game.
Ha ha hee hee.
Before we get to the NFL draft, let's go to the news that's current. We've got a recruit and a commitment here. Why don't we start with you, Kevin, in regards to running down Ryan Turner, a cornerback from Hollywood, Florida.
Yeah, exactly. He is the second commit that Ohio State's gotten in the last couple of days. He's a 6 foot, 185 cornerback. Had the opportunity to see him last week. That's why I missed the big show. I was running around the state of Florida talking to recruits and commits. Did not know at the time. I felt pretty good that Ryan Turner was going to end up in the class probably come June, and then he jumps out today and commits. But I think Ohio State's getting just the type of corner that they want with, they like that taller corner, a true 6 foot tall, which, I had the opportunity to stand next to him. And I believe that he is of that height, and, he just is a playmaker. So I think it's just a huge win. It really was going to be kind of an Ohio State Clemson type of battle. So I know that Ohio State fans certainly like getting one over on the Tigers.
Yeah, so that's two this week, Steve. If you've got anything on Ryan Turner, we also have got C.J. Hicks right there close to home in Dayton.
Hicks committed a long time ago.
Was that a long time ago?
Yeah, it's Kai Stokes, the athlete out of Armwood High School in Seffner, Florida.
Yeah, you're looking at Hicks. He committed on May 1st of 2020, if you're looking at the date.
I was looking at the date. I should have been looking at the year is what I should have been looking at.
Well, we can celebrate the 1-year anniversary of the commitment of one of the top players in this class, C.J. Hicks from Kettering Alter, an outstanding linebacker. As far as Turner, I like that. They need, obviously, to rebuild their depth at cornerback. And his ranking is maybe not necessarily as high as some people might like it. Number 380 in the 24/7 composite, number 34 at cornerback, and number 48 in the state of Florida. So, but obviously the Ohio State coaches liked what they've seen of Ryan Turner from Chaminade, Madonna Prep, and Hollywood, Florida, which is, as Kevin and I know, we were down there for the bowl game. I guess that would have been the national championship game, I guess, and kind of in the neighborhood where we were there near Fort Lauderdale. So great competition, I presume, down in that area for Ryan Turner. And he's a guy I think that, again, we'll see how he pans out this coming year as a high school senior if he gets out on the camp circuit. this coming summer and see if his ranking will increase from there. The other one was Kai Stokes, an athlete prospect from Sefner, Florida, Armwood High School, 6'2", 185 pounds. His ranking a little farther down the line, number 675 in the composite, number 56 athlete prospect, and number 89 overall in the state of Florida. Although I've had people say to me he is woefully underrated. So again, let's see how he does as a high school senior and really see what position he's going to fit in. Maybe you guys have a better idea than I do, because I've never seen athlete as a position on a football team, among your starting 11. So he's got to figure somewhere on offense or defense.
Yeah, I think they like him as their deep safety, but in the Ohio State secondary, I mean, he could end up as a deep safety, as a cover safety, or who knows where in that defensive backfield. But at 6'2" with range, you give him a shot there. I think what we're seeing is, I think recruiting rankings are going to have to play catch up to offers. And when you look at Kai Stokes' offers, they are 4- and 5-star offers with Ohio State and all of these schools that have come in, big time schools over the last month. So this is, coaches are finally getting a chance to really evaluate new stuff from players, and really recruiting companies are as well. And so I think you'll see some guys who are way off the radar be very put in front and center of the radar in the recruiting rankings. So don't get hung up on Ohio State getting a commitment from a guy in the 600s, because he won't be there long, just until the next recruiting rankings update, presuming that he impressed the recruiting analysts as much as he has the schools.
Yeah, I had a chance to talk to some of our national rivals guys, and they said that reevaluation certainly is in order, so I expect to see him fly up the rankings. He's definitely got 4-star potential, and you look at his recruitment over the course of the last 2 weeks, a lot of the big boys got involved. Ohio State, LSU, Auburn, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Kai had already kind of gone through the process somewhat, so he was familiar with it. Once Ohio State got on board, it started really a quick process there where Ohio State got in touch with them as much as they could, completely sold them on the school, kids ready to go. Ohio State's like, whoa, that was quick. And, it just was a match made in heaven there. You look at Kai, he's only played 1 year at safety. He played 11 games there, so this will be year 2. He was a kid as a freshman who played on the Frosh Soft team, played some offense after that. Now he's really taking to that safety position. Ohio State, I really think, got a steal here. As Steve said, woefully underrated, but that won't be for long. It's a blip on the radar. All the recruiting services will get this one fixed. Kid is a tremendous playmaker, tremendous athlete, and just a tremendous kid. As I had an opportunity to talk to him middle of last week when we were down in Florida. I mean, really just has his stuff together. It's going to be one that everybody's going to be pulling for.
And as Urban Meyer would say, when you get a Florida kid committed this early, that just means they're interested in you. And so they'll have to keep recruiting these guys to keep them committed, because this is the first – they haven't signed a kid from Florida technically since Legend Cavazos in 2020, who was from IMG, originally from Texas, I believe. Then you go back to the year before that with Marcus Crowley. So that's been a while. And so you get back into the Florida mix while you've got the Texas pipeline, you've got a Washington pipeline. They're getting into California more and more. So they're hitting all of the right spots. And so to get back into Florida, and if they can keep these guys committed, I think they've got 3 corners now and 1 safety. I think if they can get the right 2 safeties, they'll maybe grab 3. But I wonder how many more they're gonna pick up, Kevin.
And just talking about Florida, remember they also have the commitment of Jaheim Singletary out of Jacksonville as well. And then when you look at Ryan Turner going back there, his teammate is Kenyatta Jackson, a defensive end that Ohio State's very much after. So that'll be interesting. And jumping back to Kai Stokes, who else came out of that school was Brian Sneed, who unfortunately saw his Ohio State career come to a rapid end. But Ohio State does know Armwood High School. It's a powerhouse down there, playing in large classification. If you get it done there, you're doing it against the best of the best. So this is not a case of a guy that's coming out of a school that nobody knows of. a 2A school or whatever, and competing against Steve Gerd and myself. I mean, he's going against athletes.
It is always interesting to me when they can get a commitment from a kid at a school who had a previous player go to Ohio State that things didn't go well. And yet it's not like the coach there, I don't know if he's a new coach or the school has just been like, no, Ohio State persona non grata around here. That's not necessarily, it doesn't sound like that's the case, which is interesting to me.
Well, it shouldn't be. I mean, Brian Snead brought his own problem upon himself. That had nothing to do with the football program, the players, the coaches, or anybody associated with the Ohio State University. So, it's one of two different things.
As Steve has reminded everyone, check out the post on the screen right now. Leave your comments, your questions, your debate topics for the four of us. I will pass them on to the three of them, and then I get the option of opting out of the question. So I got the catbird seat here. So I jump in when I'd like. So when I think I can look somewhat smart, I follow up on the question. But if not, I serve it up for those three. All right, got Kevin Noon right next to me from Buckeye Grove, Tony Gerdeman, Buckeye Scoop, and Steve Hillwagon from Bucknuts on 247 Sports. So we want everyone to realize what we got here every Wednesday at 2 o'clock Eastern time. So one thing you can do is like the video. You can also share the videos out on social media. So just grab the link right now. Let people know that we're live right now. Also let them know in the future that they can jump in on Ohio State Talk here every Wednesday at 2 Eastern time. And when Steve says ask questions now, post your questions now, I think that that's about as authoritative as it gets. So I would expect a flood of questions that come in right now.
In my experience, if you don't listen to Steve, bad things happen.
Right now.
All right, Jameson Williams. My thought when he decided to leave Ohio State and made that known, that the conventional thought is, okay, you pick a school that's void of wide receivers, you look for a good quarterback, and obviously a coaching staff and a head coach that you can trust, and that's where you head. I just didn't understand that Ohio State to Alabama on the surface. Took about 10 seconds to realize, okay, I guess that Alabama team's been doing pretty well at wide receiver in the NFL draft. They moved on a couple guys. John Mechie's a really good guy with 55 catches last year. But after that, they're certainly loaded with talent, but pretty thin, Tony. So Jameson Williams to Alabama seems to make a whole lot of sense for him. Oh, do we have an issue here?
I think the cat's got his tongue. All right. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I'll just say unfortunate situation. Jameson Williams is a guy who started most of the games last year and still only had 9 catches for the entire 8-game season. And so I guess, behind Olave and Wilson, certainly, who were both in the 40-50 range in terms of catches. And the other fact of it was Williams was on the bench quite a bit because they played the 2 tight end set. And when they would go to that, they would shift him to the bench and put in Ruckert and Farrell in the 2 tight end set. I think Williams had some consistency problems catching the football. The ball went off his hands quite a bit. He dropped one first play of the spring game, as people will recall. I think Alabama, in scouting the Clemson game, the semifinal game for Ohio State, certainly saw from about 12 different angles the way that Jameson Williams was able to get behind the Clemson defense and haul in the touchdown pass there in that blowout win for Ohio State. That was probably his finest and biggest moment as a Buckeye. I'm having a hard time coming up with another one that really meant a whole lot. I'm sure there was another one somewhere. A kid with a lot of personality, seemed, very invested in what was going on, very exuberant, always brought energy and juice, as his nickname or whatever was, but just for whatever reason struggled making a difference. And whether that was getting separation or blocking or completing catches or, whatever it might be. I can't sit here. I'm not Brian Hartline. I'm not a technician with the receiving game to sit here and tell you what his falling down was, but I can tell you from watching the limited amount of spring practice that we got to see, which was about parts of 3 different practices and then the spring game, it seemed readily apparent to me that the 2 deep was Olave and Harrison at one spot with Fleming kind of behind them, and then Wilson and Jameson Williams at another spot. And then Jackson Smith and the Jigba had moved into the starting lineup at the slot with Emeka Egbuka behind him. That's how it seemed to be to me. Now, somebody else may have seen it a different way. And I think Williams understood the writing was on the wall, that not only was he not going to start theoretically if this held up for the fall, but, he was now a backup, and his opportunities, could he even get 9 catches in this rotation next year, I think was a huge question, because Harrison and Egbuka had certainly moved by him. It seemed like on this list, I gave you 6 or 7 names, and he and Fleming are like tied at 6, right now. And Fleming was hurt. So when Fleming comes back, Williams could have been 7. So, I'm not trying to be harsh about the kid or anything. I've laid it all out there. I think there were a lot of positives. I think there were a few downside things that just didn't worked against him. I don't think he was a negative influence on the team by any stretch of the imagination. I just think he saw the handwriting on the wall, the numbers game, and said, get me the heck out of here. Get me somewhere where I can get on the field. And, man, Alabama, that seems like a tough place to go try and cut your teeth, particularly after spring football's done.
And when we talked to Jameson this spring, he was asked, do you feel like you've been underutilized? Are you okay with your role? Something of that effect. And he said, I had a great year last year. I don't feel like I'm overlooked. And, it's just talked about patience and things like that. And this is a guy with 15 career catches and maybe 25 targets in his career. And clearly he got pushed back when they moved Garrett Wilson from the slot to the X, which is where Jameson Williams started last year. So now he's either behind Garrett Wilson, or if they want to move him over to the Z, he's behind Chris Olave. And knowing how much those 2 guys played, even if they rotate this year, those 2 guys aren't going to be rotating as much as anybody else. And Jameson Williams isn't a slot receiver. So yeah. And if you see some of the stuff his dad was saying on Instagram, clearly there were people in his ear saying, you know what, let's get out of here, especially after the last game they saw where Alabama receivers are getting the ball all over the place. And, you start thinking, well, once Alabama comes calling, then that seems like he starts imagining things, and who knows, like, he's ridiculously fast. We saw that as a sophomore or freshman against Miami of Ohio. I think just caught a quick pass and took it 50 yards or whatever. So he's got that kind of skill. I think they used him kind of just to clear out the defense a lot last year and allowed for some underneath stuff, semi-underneath. I mean, it's still pretty far down the field, but Jameson Williams would take guys a long way. And so can they replace him? I mean, it sure seems like they'll be able to. I'm very interested to see what he does at Alabama, how much they use him. I mean, their 3rd and 4th receivers last year both had over 20 catches, and that's something that Jameson Williams has never approached as the 3rd receiver last year, and the 5th or 6th or 7th receiver the year before that. So I don't know if it's a better opportunity for him, but you can't argue with what Alabama has done. 2 first-round receivers in each of the last 2 drafts, 5 over the last 4 years, and that's not even including guys before that. So, yeah, it was interesting to me that Michigan and Michigan State and teams like that were on the list. I thought that would have been even more interesting if he had just let it wait a little bit so we could talk about that. But I'll be interested to see what he does. And see if his family is happy with that decision.
Yeah, that was going to be basically, with every point being touched upon, that was going to be my hook at that point, was to talk about some of the other schools that thought they were in this or whatever, or at least were mentioned. And just, we see receivers at Michigan go elsewhere, a la Tariq Black or Nico Collins or whatnot, or at least opting out. So I just couldn't see a program that doesn't really know what its quarterback setup is going to be. I mean, there's not knowing what your quarterback setup is going to be in terms of like Ohio State, and then there's where Michigan may be right now. And Michigan State is not that far removed from Rocky Lombardi. So neither of those really seemed like real destinations. But yeah, I'm not going to sit there and say that there wasn't going to be opportunity for Jameson Williams, but there certainly wasn't going to be the opportunity that he would have found elsewhere, because are you going to take receptions away from Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, two guys that are surefire first-round NFL draft picks in the 22 draft? Obviously spreading it around a little bit more with a deep receiver room the way that Ohio State has it would be all well and good. You want to get these guys some experience, but yeah, and when you have two guys that when they're your first option and they're wide open, generally, it's pretty comforting to be able to go to them. And, the writing kind of was on the wall for Jameson Williams, and, you just kind of wish him the best. And I have a feeling that Ohio State and Williams will meet again in a college football playoff game here coming up soon.
Let's hope. Hope it's this year, next year, both.
And we'll see who goes first. If Jameson Williams has the year he's kind of thinking he will, then they'll all three be in the draft next year, and we can follow them there too.
Keep in mind, folks, we get the super chat available, and want to make sure that we keep this this channel and specifically this show going strong going forward, heading toward August camp. Got Roger Smith on the line asking about Marvin Harrison Jr. We all sang his praises, as did many after the spring game. That is one game, one session, not to be overblown, but hey, he's obviously an enormous talent. Do we have a good idea, Steve, where he may factor into the wide receiver rotation?
Yeah, I think he's definitely in the mix. It seemed to me that Harrison was backing up Chris Olave at the Z, but I am open to, again, how much we really got to see what they were doing and how they were lining up. I guess I'm open to that. He just seems so polished and ahead of his years, catching passes all over the field, different routes and comeback routes and out routes and different kinds of ways to get him the football. And it looked like his dad had prepared him properly for what college football is all about, because he came in with a lot of weapons in his arsenal and, looked like he belonged from day one, it seemed like, or at least day one that we got to watch them. So I think you got to be very excited about his potential as a college football player. And, he very well could be the third or fourth receiver on this team, because I think Smith-Njigba also took a big step from where we saw him at the end of last year and is much more consistent, it seems, right now. So I think you've got 4 or 5 guys there that you can really hang your hat on. And Egbuka, he came in ready to roll too. So it really is an embarrassment of riches, I think, for Ohio State at wide receiver. They need to get Fleming healthy to where then they have a full 2 deep at every spot and can really, make some big things happen. But I think you got to be excited about Harrison's potential and his future. And, he's the son of a former NFL star, but he didn't get this opportunity or this position just because of nepotism or anything like that, or because, he played with the quarterback who signed with Ohio State. He got this position, this opportunity, this scholarship because he's that good. So, and he backed it up, I thought, this spring.
Yeah, and it wasn't just – the spring game wasn't just the one performance, and one of these things where we get to see it and fans get to see it and everything gets extrapolated from there. Everything we had all been hearing all spring long was that, yeah, he even before the spring, that he arrived in the winter and immediately went to working and was catching balls at all hours, and really takes this seriously because he grew up seeing how to take it seriously and what it takes to get where you want to go. And so then he finished it well. And I do think he's part of that rotation. I think I keep saying, I think there's going to be a 6-man rotation, and you've got the 6 guys right now that, at one point there are 9 guys. You're like, well, how are they going to play all these guys? And G. Scott goes to tight end, and Mookie Cooper transferred out last year. And then you've got Jameson Williams transferring out. So the numbers eventually figure themselves out. And Steve mentioned Julian Fleming. Brian Hartline said he hasn't been healthy since high school, and that's why he was held out a bit this spring. They cleaned up his shoulder. So he'll be healthy this year for the first time. And so you figure he backed up Chris Olave last year. You would assume he'd do the same thing. Marvin Harrison is like your prototypical X kind of receiver. He's big. He's 6'3", 6'4". He'll back up Garrett Wilson. And then Jackson Smith and Jigba will start in the slot. And Emeka Egbuka, who is there behind him this spring, will be there again this season. And now you've got it's a lot to assume 2 freshmen are going to be put into the rotation. So maybe it won't be certainly won't be a 50-50. Maybe it's a 67-33 type of thing. But I think you're going to see those 6 quite a bit this year.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, but, as we were sitting there talking about just the opportunity to be able to, for guys not named Olave and Wilson to catch 30, 40 passes or whatever, probably just not going to be there. But, Marvin Harrison certainly checks off a lot of the boxes. And, I think a lot of people thought with the Scott, Egbuka, JSN class, who was going to emerge from there and, due to injuries or whatever, and then it was JSN that was able to emerge. So I think there's always room for somebody to be able to do that. And that's not sleeping on what Emeka is able to do or what Jaden Ballard is able to do. It's just ridiculous for what's going on. The only thing I'll say is when you're given your opportunity, best not waste it, because opportunity is not going to knock twice in that Ohio State receiver room.
Kevin, we've got Mike 3883 chiming in with a big picture question going even beyond 2021. So not just necessarily the roster or the team or the 2 deep that can compete against Ohio State, but looking money, facilities, the whole deal, the coach, the coaching staff, everything included. Who takes the best run at Ohio State long term?
That's hard to tell because you don't know what coaching situations are going to be. I mean, James Franklin at Penn State gets mentioned for this job, that job, and another. There seems to be some turmoil in that athletic department. Sandy Barber, the AD, seems to be under fire a little bit with what kind of happened on the basketball side. You have that school up, US 23 or whatever, that, eventually they're going to move on from Jim Harbaugh. We'll see what happens with them. Coming out of the West, I mean, year in and year out, it seems to be we all kind of gravitate toward Wisconsin. But, I think they're just as good as their running back, and their offensive line is going to take them there. Northwestern is kind of popping up a little bit more frequently than it used to under Pat Fitzgerald. We can't forget about 39-time Big Ten Coach of the Year, Kirk Ferentz, and the Iowa Hawkeyes and what they're going to do. Maybe one day Nebraska will unpack its black shirts from when it moved over from the Big 12 to the Big 10. I've given you a lot of who it could be, but honestly, Ohio State's stiffest competition is coming from its 2s. I don't know who's going to be the team that's going to step up. I think in terms of the whole picture, I'm still going to say Penn State. I just don't really think that the West is set up to have a perennial challenger year in and year out. And if we look at the beginning of 2020, Penn State was a pretty horrible team, but it bounced back as the year went on, ended on several wins or whatnot. I think Penn State is the team that is best built to be that competitive team for Ohio State.
Yeah, long term, I think Penn State. I think Indiana has got a short window here with Penix that might last for this coming season, and then it kind of comes down to who do you replace him with, because he was a big part of their success. I just did a big expose on the West Division, and the West is 0-7 all time in the Big Ten championship game since 2014 when they shuffled it. Wisconsin won it the first 2 years in 2011 and 2012, and then Michigan State won it in 2013, beat Ohio State. But since then, it's been that was Leaders and Legends for 3 years, and now it's been East-West for the last 7. and it's
They're
been
trending better than 59-0 though. It's getting closer. I think the trends in their direction.
It might be. As I looked at it, I think Iowa is probably the favorite in my mind in that division, although Wisconsin would be right there. I think Northwestern, they won it in 2018. Then they had one of the worst teams in school history in 2019. And then we're back up there and won it again this past year. And even, I guess, beat Auburn in the Citrus Bowl or something, which is just unheard of for them. So, I think they cycle back down. They don't have hardly anybody back. So I think they're going to move back down to the middle of the pack. And I think Minnesota is a team, last year, for Minnesota and Wisconsin last year, because of COVID, was kind of a year that you could kind of crumple it up and, tear it in half and throw both halves away because it just didn't go their way. Then you're kind of getting down to the bottom. Purdue, the first 2 years under Braum, they went to a bowl game. Last 2 years under Braum, losing records. So, but he's got two quarterbacks. Aiden McConnell and the other guy, some other freaking guy. They're both over 200-yard-a-game passers. And
Is Plummer still there?
Plummer, yes.
Another freaking guy.
So he's got, he's got two guys that
Jake
can play
Plummer,
quarterback.
but,
A lot of schools don't even have one quarterback. They've kind of got two, although debatable. And then Illinois still got Brandon Peters and Brett Beelzebub going in there. I look for Illinois to kind of cycle up a spot every year. I think Brett Bielema is going to get them back in the top half because it's so wide open. I mean, there's no killer program out there. So, but I look at Iowa. I mean, this could be Iowa's year.
The first team that came to my mind was Northwestern because at least like every other year, they're kind of good, and which is the most consistent of the Big Ten West and the most dangerous. Wisconsin is always Wisconsin, and that's both good and bad. But they're just sometimes Northwestern is capable of something. But eventually it'll be whoever takes over for Michigan because I can't say whoever because we've seen that Michigan is capable of hiring the wrong coach several times in a row. But you would think that whoever does that will be able to build that program into what they not even what they think it is. We'll be able to do better than Harbaugh, take it to the Lloyd Carr levels, which again is lower than people actually thought it was while they were in the midst of it, and certainly well after the fact. Michigan has always been 9-3, 10-2 at best. This 11-1 season out of nowhere. But now it's 8-4 again, and now it's 9-3, and that's Michigan. And so, is that a threat? I mean, Penn State has done better. Penn State has been able to win division titles, and so there's that. I wonder how much longer Franklin will be there. But he also is he a guy that outstays his welcome and then can't get a better job, so then he just stays there forever? Or eventually gets fired. I don't think he's done anything worth firing. So there's some, I don't know if stagnancy is the right word with Penn State, but they've certainly been helped by the downfall of other programs. What happens when other programs start to bounce back up? Do they then fall themselves? But yeah, I'm with Steve and Kevin. Like anything can happen in the West, and so it's hard to pinpoint one team out there that is a threat, and really the same can be said for the East now, other than Ohio State.
I think Penn State is less likely to make a bad hire than Michigan is to make a bad hire because while both schools have very inflated visions of who they think they are or whatever, I don't hear Penn State saying we need to go get a Penn State man, whereas Michigan is all about going out and getting a Michigan man. And I don't know. I think that if things come together for whatever reason in the Big Ten, for Penn State recruits further to the east. So I think it's going to be easier for Penn State to be able to maintain and improve upon its recruiting. Michigan, I don't know where Michigan recruits right now. Massachusetts, I guess. I don't know. But, they don't – when they were successful, they were recruiting Ohio. Ohio State certainly has a much more impenetrable wall around the state, to the point of where it just really doesn't seem that Michigan attempts to recruit Ohio State. And I can take this back to the downfall of Michigan State being kind of a every, 2 out of every 3 year thorn in Ohio State's side, going to be a real competitive game. When Michigan State kind of pulled out of recruiting against Ohio State and all those kids went to Kentucky and Illinois pulled out of recruiting there, that's when you saw the middle to bottom of the Big Ten plummet. And that's when the conference kind of went to crap. So, I think that whatever happens with any of these schools, they need to start recruiting Ohio better. I mean, offers don't mean anything. You don't have to sit there and invest $5,000 for every offer you put out there. Just throw offers out there, for God's sake. So I don't know, but I think that Penn State just has some more advantages, even in its own bloated sense of self-entitlement, because it's not the same as Michigan.
Well, and even Penn State is smart enough to go recruit Ohio. They've got Drew Aller, the quarterback, committed.
Caden
Saunders. So
Clifford's an Ohio guy.
Yep, and so there's that, and I've been saying it for years, just like Kevin with the Kentucky. You can't let Kentucky continue to come in and get Ohio guys because it hurts so many of the Big Ten programs, and now you're probably going to see like Boston College become the East Coast version of that with Jeff Hafley there, and they've got Ohio connections, and so now you're stretching the borders of Ohio, and you're just like Purdue seeing guys go, Michigan seeing guys go, Michigan State is forget about it, and then you got all of these schools that and Boston College has been able to do it before with the linebacker, what's his name, Luke Kuechly. And so there's the history there, and just Michigan doesn't even attempt to recruit against Ohio State in Ohio, and maybe that's in one part it's like, why waste your time? But on the other side, like, you have to put your hat in the ring. You've got to go toe to toe, and if you don't, you'll never be able to go toe to toe on the field.
Yeah, Jeff Hafley, I was looking at Boston College's recruiting just a couple of days ago, 37th rated class last year, and that was after 4 consecutive classes before Hafley in the mid 60s to low 70s. So in one recruiting cycle, he raised it like 35 spots. So yeah, you would think he's going to be a factor. He's likable. He's got a ton of energy, and he's going to run. He's already brought in a ton of playmakers that they haven't had at Boston College in forever.
He's going to do great at Michigan next year.
Yeah, maybe he could. If the question was phrased differently, I have the most confidence in Wisconsin being good. If you want good, 9-3 good, I have the most confidence over the 25-year track record of Wisconsin maintaining that, and to a lesser degree, Iowa. But the question's about challenging Ohio State, so I think Penn State is the long-term answer unless Michigan discovers 1997 at some point soon. Yakov, appreciate the contribution there. Yakov commenting on Tony's podcast. More quarterback with Harbs, worse he gets.
That's my
long-standing. The more
long-standing
he recruits and develops, attempts to develop.
My long-standing Harbaugh quarterback theory: the more time a quarterback spends with Jim Harbaugh, the worse he gets. And I have yet to be disproven on that. So
we are going to take you from here, and we are going to get you to here.
It's like, Mark, when you grab one of the helmets on the top of your shelf and you put it on the bottom shelf, you could be a quarterback whisperer doing that.
We are not going to block for you, nor are we going to put receivers out who are going to run routes for you, and we're not going to run the ball well either. So
what about defense?
We see a good trajectory like this.
Well, guess the
our receivers are not going to lay out for you. That game a couple years ago when Ohio State got that lead, their receivers flat out quit. I mean, flat. I mean, and this was their big name, DPJ, Collins, blah, blah, blah. None of them made a play in the second half. I mean, it was bad.
I think maybe that's the theory or the approach to showing them off for the NFL scouts is you're going to have to take it on all yourself. to truly show your skill set.
They're going to be a blank slate because we're not going to teach them anything.
Hey, congratulations to Michigan for putting 9 guys in the NFL draft this year and getting 2 wins out of it.
Off such crappy team. Wow.
9 this NFL draft, 10 last year.
Mm-hmm. And
leads us to the.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to take us right into our NFL draft discussion, but I think that's going to cancel out another shot at Harbaugh in Michigan. I don't want to do that.
No, it's just, I mean, to see what their quarterbacks coach go and tweet like Michigan's the only school in the last 3 years to have a first rounder in each draft or something, or I don't even remember exactly what it was, but it's like, yes, you kind of have to tout what you've done in the draft, but then you also have to attach to what you have not been able to do during the regular season with these things. These guys have, look what we've done. We've produced these guys. Well, you've also underachieved. And so you're almost advertising that as well. And then for one of the assistant defensive coaches to quote tweet the stat about Michigan State not having a draft pick for the first time in 80 years, saying you hate to see it the year after Michigan State beats Michigan. It's just, Michigan should just not talk about the NFL draft or Michigan State, or just lay low for a while, stay off of social media for a while until what you do on the field is worth tweeting about.
Ann Arbor, Mothra attack free for 539 days. I mean, it's just as relevant. I mean, say less. Say less.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when they send stuff like that out, it's almost like there's an underlying theme or a given that we know that that we're underachieving on the field, but hey, this is the plus side to that.
This could happen for one of the 24 people that signed with us this year, but only one.
We've got all sorts of questions coming in about the NFL draft, and Tony, we'll stay with you since you've got the team and the guy matching up. Justin Fields, Chicago Bears. Now, could you possibly put aside any scarlet and gray bias there? Would you truly be this excited otherwise?
Oh yeah. He's the prototype. He's 6'3", 228 pounds, runs a 4.4, accurate as heck, strong arm, can run, is smart, is a leader, plays when he's injured. I don't understand where are the flaws. He needs to take medicine at night before he goes to bed. I'm taking him off my board. No, that's whatever. All NFL players take medicine at night before bed. Let's just put that out there. But no, I've been excited about the Cade McNown draft. I've been not so much excited about the Rex Grossman. Mitch Trubisky, I've scrubbed all excitement from social media about that one. But you're like Eric Kramer and Jim Miller being 2 of the best quarterbacks in franchise history, and being, gosh, I remember Jim Miller threw for like 400 yards 2 consecutive weeks, and Eric Kramer was threw for like 3,000, and it's like they've never had anybody throw for 4,000 yards. And this era of football, like Jameis Winston, I think did that like as a rookie. So there's this definite excitement. I don't know if he starts from game 1 or whatever. You've got Andy Dalton there, and that's fine. Eventually, though, he'll give Andy Dalton will lose a knee or a hip or an elbow, and then Justin Fields will come in and never come out.
Isn't Sid Luckman still the answer to the question, who's the greatest quarterback in Bears history? Still go Sid Luckman, right?
I mean, Grossman took up to a Super Bowl.
Mike Phipps.
Mike Tomczak.
Bob Avellini.
Bob Avellini, yeah.
All right, Kevin. So 10 Buckeyes go. Pick and choose. What do you want to talk about? Who do you think's a good fit? I was surprised by this Pete Werner selection. I got to say that. You don't need to address that, but I had no idea he was on that high of radar for NFL scouts until you guys addressed it last week.
I'll throw some chum in the water and let Tony and Steve jump on it. I probably was a little shocked that Werner was the second Buckeye off the board, even with all of that talk. I'm a little surprised that Josh Myers went ahead of Wyatt Davis. I guess You know, I certainly had heard everything about, you know, we saw the whole season that, you know, Sean Wade certainly didn't have the year that Sean Wade or Randy Wade or anybody involved with the process expected. I guess I'm a little shocked that he made it all the way down to 160. I think he still was a tremendous slot corner, still could do a lot of things, tested very well at the pro day that he participated in. You know, I'm just still not quite sure how he made it all as far down as he did to 160.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Kevin. I think Wade dropping to the 5th round as he did back at the end of the 5th round, to me, him being from Jacksonville, it just seemed to me like it was a ready-made thing for Urban Meyer to take him to play in his hometown in those later rounds. And he not only didn't take him, he took the tight end, Luke Farrell, I think early in the 5th round. We were all texting one another, I think Kevin and Tony and myself and Patrick Murphy and a few others. And somebody made the point that they were taking cornerbacks from the Big 12. They were taking a cornerback from Central Arkansas or somewhere before Sean Wade. And that just is stunning in so many ways. A guy that could have been a borderline 1st round, 2nd round pick last year doesn't go until the 5th by playing another year of college football. And he didn't play particularly well this past year, but you know, again, what was what it was. It was kind of a messed up year all the way around. I thought for Werner, that was great. 2nd round to the Saints. We had even heard a few voices in the distance that thought maybe late 1st round for him, just because of how bright he is and the things that he'd shown on tape, you know, as a run stopper and these kind of things, I guess. And so I don't know. That was kind of a neat thing for him to be the 2nd Buckeye taken. I don't think anybody saw that coming. I think everybody thought it would be Wyatt Davis or Josh Myers, perhaps, and then they came along shortly thereafter, along with Baron Browning in the 3rd round. And there weren't, you know, too many surprises. I think Davis going in the 3rd round was a steal. And I really like the Browns picking up Tommy Togiai in the 4th round. I think that's a steal for the Buckeyes. Kind of showed, you know, that the 30 bench press reps really didn't matter so much as I don't know what matters, but he's a defensive tackle. He's got great strength, and he's going to have an opportunity with the Browns. He's already in the 2 deep at an interior defensive line position. So he's going to have a great opportunity there. I thought Bengals and Browns, just for the people in our listening audience, both did very well on the whole. And Bengals did get their offensive line help with the oft controversial Jackson Carman in the 2nd round from Fairfield. And as we kind of joked, he's going to have to scrape off the guys back in his hometown and concentrate strictly on the Bengals and the NFL if he's going to be a success at that level. But can be kind of hard to sometimes come back home and play in your hometown. But we'll see how he does for the Bengals. And you know, there's only one way to go for the Bengals, and that's up. Whereas the Browns are hoping to take that next step or two deeper in the playoffs. So we'll see how that transpires.
I think the Bengals can just keep doing this, like just going in the same direction, like just sideways.
3
off
wins,
the
4
screen.
wins, 5 wins, 2 wins, 4 wins, 3 wins, 5 wins, 4 wins, 3 wins, 2 wins, 4 wins, 5 wins, 4 wins, 2
But
wins,
I do
3
think
wins.
I
I was
think
going to
Joe
say
Burrow,
he's only up to a 5-way in Cincinnati style Chili's, so 5 has got to be in their cap.
5 is the max.
yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what Trey Sermon does. I think as long as he stays healthy, the way he finished his career, he was as good as playing as well as any running back we've seen at Ohio State before, and was really just so comfortable and looked like he knew where the defense was going to be before they were going to be there, and was able to adjust to them, and very Matrix-like at times, especially against Northwestern. But he wasn't even touched before he get 8 or 9 yards against Northwestern. But against Clemson, he was good as well. And in that offense, they'll use him at San Francisco, and they do different things with their running backs. So I think that's a good one. And I wasn't shocked that Pete Werner was the 2nd Buckeye to go. I certainly not shocked to see New Orleans take an Ohio State player, that's for sure, on defense, and I think he'll do well there. They've even going back to like when they drafted C. Grant and Rob Kelly, Will Smith in the past. They've always liked the Buckeyes even before this most recent regime.
There was some controversy about the 49ers taking Sermon. Did they have good running backs already in house, and people thought there were other needs that should have been addressed instead of a running back in the third round? That kind of vaguely heard a little bit of that talk. But
They've got
I don't
Raheem
follow it.
Mostert, who is, I guess
Okay.
they say, like a smaller version of Trey Sermon, and they've got another guy there that they're going to use as well. But you got to get some help for that young quarterback that's going to have to sit for a year because he only played 1 year of FCS football and is very inexperienced and is a complete project.
Yeah. And we just know that tread comes off these running backs so quick as well that it's just a position I think you have to keep addressing over and over and over again, because if not, then you're going to have to go into a draft absolutely taking one at the top end where they're a little bit overvalued.
I'll go back in on Fields. I think for him to go to an 8-8 team in Chicago instead of going to one of these teams that only won 3 or 4 games last year is tremendous for him, because you got to figure they've got enough players around him to win some games. And if he's any good at all, maybe they can get to 10 wins and get into the playoffs. I don't think their division is particularly tough, particularly if Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers have kind of a splitting of the ways. And Green Bay could cycle back down to the rest of the division. I don't think the Vikings or Lions are world beaters. Vikings with Kirk Cousins and Lions, just kind of meh. So I think the potential is there for Fields to do really well. I have no idea what their receiving situation is, or offensive line situation or running game situation. I just know they won 8 games last year, so it's not like he's going into a completely barren franchise. I mean, they don't have the reputation of winning big or having great quarterbacks per se, as we kind of debated earlier on here, but I like Nagy. I think he's got a decent enough track record as a coach to get something out of him, and they wanted him. And I think he wasn't somebody who they took by default. It was somebody that they traded up for. And the moment that trade was announced, you were like, oh dear, there it is. And, I think the people of Chicago wanted him because they've seen him tear up the Big Ten for the last 2 years. So I think that, I think they're interested, and a lot of Ohio State alums in Chicago as well. Although, it's a big city. I don't think he's a guy that's going to go there and get caught up with the trappings of celebrity and limo here and club there and, 2 girls on his arm there and that kind of crap. I think he's a football guy who's going to go into the office at 7 a.m. and get his film work done and do his workouts, his treatment, and prepare and do what he's supposed to do. And I think he's going to do really well there.
Yeah, no Broadway Joe version of the Second City Troy there. Okay. Shoot, forget where I was going. Oh, yeah. You talk about offensive line. Well, the Bears, Tony, they selected 2 offensive linemen right after Justin Fields. So that shows you where the Bears offensive line is. It's been awful.
And they just released their starting left tackle for the last 7 years. So they'll have a rookie there, their second-round pick, doing that likely. And from what I've been told, they couldn't really put the entire Kansas City offense in the Chicago offense because Mitchell Trubisky wasn't able to handle it. So they still made the playoffs last year, mostly because of everybody else sucking as well. But you've got that defense, and you've got to do something while you have this defense. And I don't know if a rookie quarterback is able to do that. I think they're more ready now than they used to be, but I always go back to Peyton Manning, his rookie year, threw 32 or 28 interceptions, and I think still holds the record. And one of the greatest of all time can still be bad as a rookie. Tom Brady didn't play as a rookie really at all. And so it's a lot to ask, but they are more ready now than they were back then because they've been getting ready since they were, going to quarterback camps as a 6th grader. And I've just been, so many of these quarterbacks have just been doing it for almost as long as they've been walking.
Yeah, that Colts team was historically awful, and that's why they had the number 1 pick. And then they just cut Peyton Manning loose and just let him go and throw it all over the place. And he threw for a ton of yards and almost as many touchdowns as picks, but he threw a ton of picks. Yeah, I think 28 was the number.
He had Marvin Harrison, who's our guy, who created Marvin Harrison Jr., who's now our guy. So interesting. The two North divisions play each other, I think, in crossover this year. So the Bears will be playing the Bengals and the Browns, and I think they're playing at the Browns. So that'll be kind of cool. Fields will get to come back to Ohio to play the Browns, I think, this year.
I'm hearing that maybe the NFL didn't necessarily know what to do with Jonathan Cooper, because I thought he might factor in higher, but they don't exactly know where he's going to play.
I think it's crazy that there was all this talk about Baron Browning, a linebacker at Ohio State, could be an edge guy, and Jonathan Cooper, who was an edge guy, could be an outside linebacker. I'm like, who knows? Who cares? Just get him in, figure it out. 3-4, 4-3, play out here, whatever. It gives me a headache thinking, a guy is trained for the last 3 years to play this position, and yet his skill set, he in the NFL, he translates to blah. I'm like, I don't get it. I don't understand it. But Cooper, to me, probably got drafted about where he should have, because I don't know that he's an impact NFL defensive player. I think he's a good player at the Big Ten college level and had some very important plays in some very big games. But too many times you just kind of looked around and said, is Jonathan Cooper playing in this game? Because he didn't seem to make kind of the impact. And I know he had some injuries at times as well, but I'm interested to see, how he pans out at the NFL level. And same really for Browning. Browning, it seemed his first 3 years, he was banged up all the time, was a situational player, and finally got turned loose as an every down player, or a most every down player this past year, and did pretty well. So those two guys, we'll see how they fit in NFL.
I could see Cooper definitely making a 53-man roster. I mean, I think that his football knowledge and his athleticism in terms of what he does really well bodes well for somebody who could be a special teams maven. I think that he could still come in there and give you some snaps if need be. Browning was a bit of an enigma in terms of, he was a guy who was supposed to be able to run for days, and there's no doubting that he has the ability to do that. But, he definitely has a lot of the scheme work to clean up. I mean, he was somebody who I think was constantly pointed out, was maybe didn't always take the best angles or things of that nature. But when this becomes his full-time job, I think there certainly is some opportunity for him to tighten some of that stuff up. So, yeah, I really heard a wide range of people saying that he could be a mid-2. I heard down to like 4, and he ends up going pick 105. So, kind of right in the middle of the range that I kind of expected him. I think that it's just an interesting location with Denver. I think I'm very curious to see how that experiment works out.
I think the Jonathan Cooper thing, one of the great social media posts of the draft, where after he gets drafted, he goes outside and all the neighborhood kids come and swarm him and congratulate him, gives you an inside look at the kind of person he is. Like, he's never been an impact player in terms of numbers, but I think he's always been an impact person for the program. And wherever he goes, he will take that same kind of impact. But this is a guy who has 10 career sacks at Ohio State, playing in parts of 5 seasons. And yet he's also been starting since the 2018 season. Started in front of Chase Young. He was the bookend with Nick Bosa to start the season before Nick Bosa went down, and then Chase Young came into the lineup. So they put him in there. He's always making the right decisions, doing the right things. It just didn't always lead to sacks. But the coaching staff could not have been more comfortable having him out there. And does that kind of comfort work in the NFL, or do we still need some production, like some actual, you got to get the quarterback, or is there value to what he does in the NFL? And it's a 7th round pick. I've had people tell me he's definitely going to make the team. It's just what he does after that this year. We'll see. But certainly you've never heard anybody say anything bad about him in his time at Ohio State. And even in his time from the guys like Kevin and covering him during recruiting, like he's always the family, him always easy to talk to. And like they know everybody and they will talk to everybody because that's just who they are.
Steve, my recommendation next year is to watch every minute. Don't miss a minute of the NFL draft, and it'll all just kind of fall into place for you.
Yeah. I just am not that interested. I'm a Browns person, and, obviously from coverage standpoint, got to follow it for Ohio State. But even then, we had a lot of our work on the draft pre-written and ready to go. The only draft coverage I really did was I got on a conference call or a Zoom call with Justin Fields about 20 minutes after the pick. I was able to jump on a call and got some comments from him. That was the only coverage I really did of the draft as it unfolded. And then I went and covered AAU basketball in Fort Wayne Friday, Saturday. And, really, I'd get the notes on my phone and I would text back and say, Wade hasn't gone yet, ? And then I'd get the updates on my phone and I would text back and I'd say, Wade hasn't gone yet, ? And then the updates would come in on my phone and I would text back and say, Wade really hasn't gone yet, ? But eventually I was driving back from Fort Wayne. Eventually he did go. There you go.
It is crazy that like Marlon Kerner and Vinnie Clark and all of these guys went before he did.
Not crazy. Ohio State's had a ton of guys who obviously over the years would have never played a down of football or very few downs of football in the NFL that went, probably dozens of guys that went ahead of where Wade went that never made a mark in the NFL. So, yeah.
If we rewind to 2 years ago and I say, who's going to go higher in the draft, Shaun Wade or Damon Arnett? Where are you going with that?
Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
And one other social media comment that I read, because I was driving around Florida and Georgia talking to the high school recruits for football, didn't watch much of the draft. Unlike Steve, I love the draft. I really do. I hate it when they go in and start doing interviews and we don't get to hear about the actual picks. But somebody said, somebody's doing a team a favor because Shaun Wade's going to play pissed off forever. And he's going to play pissed off forever at this point.
Here in the palm of my hand are all of the bleeps that I give about the NFL draft. So there you go.
I love the NFL draft too. I can just sit and watch it and watch it and watch it. Yeah, I even get as you know, I got a ton of friends who watch the first 10 picks or watch the first night, watch the first round, may dive into the second round, but I'm just as interested day 3, mid 6th round. I even find that more interesting in certain ways because they're just all the networks are focused strictly on football at that point, and the picks are coming at you rapid fire.
Back in the day, yeah, go ahead, Steve.
I like what ESPN did. I think on the ABC feed, you could listen to Herb Street and Reese Davis and Desmond Howard give you the college take, and then they would mix in some McShay and Kuiper from time to time. And then over on ESPN proper, they had the NFL crew giving you the NFL perspective. So you had your choice. And NFL Network, really does a nice job on it as well. I think there were some complaints about, the tenor of the coverage and some of the different things, but, nothing. And again, I think they get distracted with having the fans there that they've got to show the fans, sitting out in the rain or whatever there in Cleveland, that they had to keep, the least little bit of that you show, the better, in my opinion, because that is truly means nothing. I know coming out of a pandemic, it was nice that they were able to have a little bit of a gathering, but I guess that was what they were going for.
Yeah, I didn't need to see the Roger Goodell fart chair up there that he did the draft from last year. I only really got to see the first round because I was on the road the other 2 days. So like Mark being the draftnik, I listened to it on satellite radio because I have a sickness like that. But just the whole chair thing, I just was like, please. Unless they're going to auction the chair off and give it to charity or whatever. This is tired. I'm done with this. And
well, they had a 2-hour pregame show from 6 to 8 on all the channels to preview the draft, and then they said the draft starts at 8 o'clock. No, it doesn't. At 8 o'clock, they're going to sing their songs and have the guys come out with the rifles and crap. And I'm like, Why aren't they naming the first pick at 8:05? We're putting that team on the clock at 8:05. This was ridiculous. You had a 2-hour pregame show to do all that falderall. I mean, that to me, that's just terrible television. I think they're just they were trying to delay it as far as they could to get the audience on the West Coast in front of their televisions. Kind of how I look at it.
Well, I know from being involved that the spot that airs following the first pick in the NFL draft is worth $1 zillion and is the most costly of the inventory there.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the reasons why I believe, I don't know this for sure. I wasn't that involved to know at this level, but why, of course, Trevor Lawrence's name isn't announced until the clock basically hits 0. And they're waiting that entire time. It wouldn't surprise me, but I do know from working with those commercial logs that that pick is a pricey one in regards to ad inventory. No question about
Lawrence.
that. My favorite panel before we leave of covering the NFL draft this past weekend was Reese Davis, Lewis Riddick, Kuiper, and McShay on Saturday. I thought that they were great. I loved hearing those guys go at it. I thought that was a great combination.
I really like Mike Mayock, and so I was happy that he kind of left because Mel Kiper has always been my favorite, and so I no longer have to choose between the two because, as a kid, me and my brother would go and watch the draft. We'd have to go to one of my relatives with cable and watch it, and then as I got older, me and a buddy would go to the bar and have them turn it on, and the bartender would be like, "You want to watch what?" And then we would just stay there, 3 meals and the NFL draft and as much, and just drinking all day and eating, whatever, and just enjoying the draft. And I'm with you and Kevin. It's a sports holiday for sure.
Right. I'll end with this. Mike Mayock is a much better draft analyst than he is a GM. And you guys can sit there and talk about Mayock, who obviously is a GM with the Vegas Raiders now, versus Kuiper. I got to listen to Gil Brandt on the radio, and he lost his fastball about 10 years ago. It was difficult.
Yeah, I don't know why anybody would give him a forum at this late stage. He's so out of touch. Great guy, but just out of touch on what's going on.
Yeah, I'm sure he was giving everyone takes from 1985. Of course, Gil Brandt, if nobody knows, built the Dallas Cowboys dynasties. All right, good stuff with Tony Gerdeman, Buckeyes Scoop. Got Steve Hellwagon, of course, from Bucknuts 247 Sports, and Kevin New next to me from Buckeye Grove. You got to check out their work. The insight, information, knowledge, everything that they bring to the table here is phenomenal. All right, guys, have a great rest of your week. We will see you hopefully next Wednesday at 2.
Sounds good.
All right.